From The Australian, here's what's on the front. I'm Claire Harvey. It's Friday, May 2, 2025. It's election eve and The Australian is reporting today Labor has courted Beijing-backed property developers and senior figures in the Chinese Communist Party's foreign influence arm. Anthony Albanese has refused to rule out new taxes, and the coalition released the costings of its policies, showing a deeper projected budget deficit in its first 2 years, but a reduced budget deficit within 4 years. Erin Patterson conducted taste tests where she hid mushroom powder in muffins and fed them to her children. That was part of the evidence in an emotional day of testimony by Crown witness Simon Patterson, Erin's husband. Erin has pleaded not guilty to 3 counts of murder and 1 of attempted murder for feeding death cap mushrooms to Simon's parents, aunt and uncle, something she says was a terrible accident. Today, Simon Patterson describes the breakdown of her marriage and Erin's attempts to get him to come to the fatal lunch. The day before a lunch that would kill his parents and his auntie, Simon Patterson sent a text to his wife, Erin. Erin Patterson had invited her husband, from whom she was separated after a rocky marriage, along with his parents, Don and Gail, and aunt and uncle, Heather and Ian. Erin Patterson told Simon Patterson that she had serious health news to share and wanted to talk frankly without the presence of their 2 children. But Simon Patterson, who had declined an earlier invitation to lunch, decided he didn't want to go. In the early evening of July 28, 2023, he sent Erin Patterson this message.
Sorry, I feel too uncomfortable about coming to the lunch with your mum, dad, Heather and Ian tomorrow. But I'm happy to talk about your health and implications of that at another time, if you'd like to discuss on the phone. Just let me know.
5 minutes later, Erin Patterson replied.
That's really disappointing. I've spent many hours this week preparing lunch for tomorrow, which has been exhausting in light of the issues I'm facing, and spent a small fortune on beef eye fillet to make beef Wellingtons because I wanted it to be a special meal, as I may not be able to host a lunch like this again for some time. It's important to me that you're all there tomorrow and that I can have the conversations that I need to have. I hope you'll change your mind. Your parents and Heather and Ian are coming at 12:30. I hope to see you there.
That exchange was read to the jury in Erin Patterson's Supreme Court of Victoria trial, where Simon Patterson sat in the witness box across the courtroom from his wife in the dock. Erin Patterson has pleaded not guilty to 3 counts of murder for killing Don and Gail Patterson and Gail's sister Heather Wilkinson. She's also pleaded not guilty to 1 count of attempted murder relating to Simon's uncle Ian, who became seriously ill after the lunch but survived. The Crown alleges she invited the family to her home with murderous intent and served them a meal she knew contained deadly death cap mushrooms. Erin Patterson's lawyer has told the jury she didn't intend to kill anyone, and it was a tragedy and a terrible accident. We've used voice actors to bring you the words spoken in the Supreme Court of Victoria. Simon Patterson.
Erin's very intelligent. I guess some of the things that attracted me to her in the first place was definitely her intelligence. She's quite witty and can be quite funny.
That was how Simon Patterson began his evidence on day 2 of the trial, telling the jury what made him fall in love with Erin when they met while both working at the local council. She was a qualified accountant and air traffic controller, but she was an animal lover, working as an RSPCA representative at the council. He was a civil engineer. Simon Patterson described a turbulent marriage where Erin would frequently leave him, including when they were driving around Australia in a 4-wheel drive with their baby son.
We'd sort of done the northern part of Australia right up to the top of Cape York Peninsula and then got back down to Townsville, and Erin decided, or chose to fly just herself back to Perth. And so, I packed everything up and the baby, and I drove across Australia through the middle, straight back to Perth.
When they arrived in Perth, Patterson, who, Simon said, had inherited $2 million from her late grandmother, had organised a rental house for herself and the baby.
I organised to stay in an on-site van at a caravan park nearby. I don't know how many months, a few months. What I understood from Erin was that she was struggling inside herself.
They got back together and moved to Victoria.
Erin decided to buy herself a separate house and move into it.
They separated again. Crown Prosecutor Nanette Rogers SC. Her words are read by a voice actor.
How would you describe the relationship? Was it a bit strained?
Yeah, it was strained. There was tension in it. I'd organised a family counsellor in Leongatha. I was always keen to have a good relationship, have a good marriage and a good strong family to bring up the kids in. I think it's good to be friends with the person you're married to, and plus I like to have good relationships with anyone, especially my wife. But also partly because it was... So it's really important to me that... Sorry, can I have some tissues, please?
Do you want a break?
I don't. That's fine. I'm just struggling to answer the question, but I'll get there.
Simon Patterson said they'd retained a friendly relationship where they shared custody of their 2 children and shared family holidays together, both in Australia and overseas. But one day in late 2022, about 7 months before the fatal lunch, after he dropped off one of the children at her home, Simon recalled Erin Patterson saying she wanted a serious conversation.
She said that she discovered that my tax return for the previous financial year had for the first time noted that we were separated. Before that, we hadn't got the government involved in the fact we were separated at all before then. And so she said that mattered, I think, for the family tax benefit, something of that nature. And she would be obliged to claim child support off me, which had never happened before. And so she pointed that out, and she was upset about it.
Simon Patterson said he hadn't intended to describe himself as separated, that it was probably a miscommunication between him and his accountant. He said he offered to amend the tax return.
Erin rejected that as a possibility and said she wasn't happy with that. I think it was resolved by us agreeing she would apply for child support.
But that, said Simon Patterson, was the end of their friendly relationship. The chatty banter on messages ceased. He said he then began declining requests to pay school fees and medical bills, telling Erin that should be covered by the child support payments.
Was she happy or unhappy?
Pretty sure she was very upset about that. I was sure she was very upset about that.
Simon Patterson said after this, Erin Patterson involved his parents, Don and Gail Patterson, in the discussion about the school fees via a group chat on the messaging app Signal.
I think it was pretty clear she was asking for them to be involved. That's my opinion. They responded, encouraging us to resolve it between each other.
Asked about Erin Patterson's relationship with his parents, Simon Patterson said,
She got on particularly well with Dad. They shared a love of knowledge and the world, and I think she liked his gentle nature. Mum and Dad were really active in maintaining a good relationship with Erin. I think it was mutual.
The morning after the lunch, Sunday, July 30, Simon Patterson got a call from his father, Don.
He told me that he and Mum had been vomiting and had diarrhoea since, I think it was first light, and then Mum started perhaps an hour later, and that had been continuing throughout the night, fairly frequently. And so they'd called emergency services.
Don Patterson told his son Ian and Heather Wilkinson had similar symptoms, Simon Patterson said. He said he then drove to the Wilkinsons' home.
Ian answered the door.
How did he appear?
Sick. He looked grey, I suppose, and stooped. Yeah, he was struggling. I think I said, "How are you?" He said, "Not good."
Simon Patterson said he entered the house and found Heather Wilkinson hunched over a container he described as a spew bucket.
We didn't have much conversation, but she puzzled and she said, "I noticed Erin served herself her food on a coloured plate, which was different to the rest."
He took them to hospital.
Did Heather say something to you?
Yeah, she did. She mentioned the coloured plate again, so she asked me, "Is Erin short of crockery? Is that why she would have this different kind of coloured plate?"
Did you reply to Heather's observation?
I said yes, Erin doesn't have that many plates, and that may be the reason.
When he first saw his parents in hospital, Simon Patterson observed his father seemed very ill.
Dad was substantially worse than Mum. He was really struggling. He was lying on the side, hunched, noticeably discoloured face. Speaking was an effort, and taking the energy to speak was an effort, and his voice was strained. He wasn't right inside.
Simon told the jury Don Patterson told him that at the lunch, Erin Patterson had told him she had cancer.
He said they'd found cancer, I think ovarian cancer, in Erin. So she was expecting to have, I think, chemo and potentially surgery. Mum said that she talked about the question of how to break the news to the kids, and that she believed we should talk about that with the kids together.
And did your father agree with that strategy?
They were both really strong on us working our marriage out together and everything out together.
The previous night, Erin Patterson had told her husband she had diarrhoea symptoms, the jury heard.
She wanted to go to hospital, or thought she should go to hospital perhaps. But again, she was worried that if she drove herself there, she was worried she might poo her pants driving.
So did she ask you something?
She asked me to come and take her to the hospital.
When he saw his wife later at the local medical centre, Simon Patterson said she didn't seem to be rushing to the toilet frequently. He brought their children to hospital and they spent time in the same room as Erin Patterson. Simon Patterson said during their time at the hospital, the family discussed the fact the daughter didn't like mushrooms. Simon Patterson said Erin Patterson told him and the children that she'd been dehydrating mushrooms and pulverising them, then putting the powder in muffins for the children.
She said she did a blind taste test with our daughter by adding powdered dehydrated mushroom to food, and they all found it interesting that our daughter did like the muffins with mushrooms.
Coming up, Erin Patterson's lawyer cross-examines her husband. Erin Patterson's lawyer, Colin Mandy SC, cross-examined Simon Patterson. He asked Simon Patterson to agree their relationship had been cordial over the years, and Patterson agreed the couple and their children had taken many holidays together even after separation.
Would you agree with this proposition, that Erin was very generous with that money she received from her gran?
Yes.
Especially to you and your siblings?
Yes.
He agreed they used some of her inheritance to make loans of up to $300,000 to two of Simon's siblings.
And you'd agree with this proposition that, consistent with all of that, money has never really been a significant factor, motivating factor in Erin's life decisions?
Yeah, I think both of us. I don't think money's not been the most important motivation to either Erin or me in our decisions.
Mandy asked about Erin Patterson's religious faith.
When I met Erin, she was an atheist.
Mandy brought up a day when the couple attended the Currumbara Baptist Church. Mandy asked if Ian Wilkinson, one of the guests at the lunch, was the pastor delivering the sermon that day. Patterson said he couldn't recall.
Do you recall that Erin was moved by the sermon?
I think I know what you're referring to. Yeah, Erin was moved during the service. I think during the communion, she quickly walked, stepped up and left the church building and went outside.
And was she upset?
She looked upset, yeah.
Was there discussion with her afterwards about why that was? And was it because she was moved by the sermon?
Oh, she was moved. My memory of it, she was actually moved by what was happening during the communion part of the service, not the sermon.
But by a religious or spiritual aspect of what was happening on that day?
Yes.
The pair owned multiple properties, and Simon Patterson said he was puzzled about why Erin Patterson added his name to the title on some of those properties.
It made me wonder about whether she was using me for my expertise and contacts to build her house, or whether she genuinely thought this was, a move towards living together as a family again.
Colin Mandy asked Simon Patterson to agree that Erin's self-image wasn't great after she'd gained a lot of weight.
Do you accept she wasn't happy with the way she looked?
Erin is not particularly happy with how she is, including probably most aspects. I don't think she has high self-esteem.
The trial continues. Our reporters John Ferguson and Ellie Dudley are in court, and you can read their reporting all day at theaustralian.com.au.